prisoner transport, one of the big things they go over is just being aware. Your awareness has to be on at the highest level. You have to be constantly aware of what's going on at every moment. That's taxing. In a real search, if they're not finding anything over a couple of days, that's a real worry point because you need to keep constantly finding and searching and getting. Being angry about a situation is not going to change it. I have never been angry at a situation in my life and it's solved. So that way you didn't have to pay your gas bill anymore. Being angry about a situation is not going to change it. I have never been angry at a situation in my life and it's solved.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Big Man's Cabana podcast. I'm your host, Matthew J. Lepore, and I am on with Mr. David B. Secker. See? Look at that.
How you doing, Matt?
Yeah, dude, so you were on before. We got to talk a little bit about your life and kind of, your whole lifting background and you being a constable. But today I was telling you I want to focus a little bit more on like what that job kind of is, because I had a lot of people ask me, he was great, it was awesome, I learned so much, but I want to know some kind of crazy stories and kind of what was going on with different things. I know, and I know you said you can't talk too much about it, but like with the Cavalcante stuff and obviously tell what you can, and of course everyone can go fuck themselves. He cannot talk about certain things, so I don't want to hear bullshit. I love you all, but
Fair borders put on.
yeah. So but yeah, dude, life's been kind of wild the past couple months.
Yes, it's been a little weird time. You've seen Pennsylvania get in the news for odd things. You have two escapees at the same time, and one thing we do as constables is prisoner transports. That's something like nobody really sees. That's one thing about the constable life I kind of like, is that we work in spaces where we're not really, it's not an upfront position. It's not supposed to be. We perform functionary aspects of the court and the needs of these things.
Yeah.
So and prisoner transport, one of the big things they go over is just being aware. Your awareness has to be on at the highest level. You have to be constantly aware of what's going on at every moment. That's taxing. And that is taxing. That I say that because it means trying to be on that level is taxing both physically and mentally. You have to keep your head on a swivel. You have to know where you are, constantly observing details. And over enough time, not that, just like any human being, that's the other thing, it's human beings, things go wrong. Now, it's not an excuse. That's not a cop-out or anything. That's just the nature of reality. We're human beings, and things go wrong. Now, did this Cavalcante guy get, in terms of trying to he rolled in D&D world, that man rolled all sixes.
Yeah,
that man just got all sixes,
yeah.
and he ran that luck really hard. I mean, as we know from the aftermath, they literally almost stepped on the guy.
Yeah,
That's how hairy something like that can really be. And when I heard that he was in Longwood Gardens area, going back to the historical mind here, that's part of where the Underground Railroad was.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a humongous tract of land where there are so many places to hide and move.
Yeah.
And, somebody who's fighting for their life, they're going to get small real quick.
Well, wasn't there, and this could be, and if I'm wrong, please, slap me in the face, but I did hear there was another person who they got him, but when he was in that area, he escaped. They couldn't find him. It was almost impossible. I thought there was. Again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just the internet just telling me things.
That's the thing. Nothing I can remember off the cuff, but that doesn't mean it's not out there.
Dude, I still can't believe. I remember when it happened because he escaped on the 31st.
Oh yeah.
I remember. I think you were just doing some cardio. On the and we were talking about it, and I think I asked you, and it was maybe 2 days after or 3 days after or something like that.
Yeah, I think they caught or they got more. He changed shirts or he got the rifle. That was it. I think he got the rifle. And that's when it got not that it wasn't in high priority then, but when he got that rifle, that that had to set everyone on fire.
Well, dude, like, well, so no, I'm talking about like when we first talked about it, because we talked about it when it was at like a 10K, because we didn't even have the rifle yet, and it was like I remember like it was like 2 days past.
Oh yeah,
and
you were.
and then I'm like, he goes, maybe I'll have to go hunting for 10K, and then it kind of kept happening. But in my head, I'm like, okay. It's a couple days past, I haven't seen Dave in a little bit, and of course, I see him like every Sunday.
Yeah. They didn't. We were not constables were not a part of that, that search. There was a much more directed operation from the state police doing all that. But funny enough, I'm from Chester County,
Yeah.
so like it was interesting to see his tracked and path,
Yeah.
because like I know a lot of those woods,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of those areas, and there's. I think it's hard for people to grasp. Like, oh, it's only so much area. This is a large tract of land where you can just move from place. There's plenty of tall grass. If you don't want to be found, you cannot be found in there really easily. And like he was hiding in a wood pile. I couldn't tell you how many, hay barrels, like different construction in various parts of where that's going on. There's like. You could spend weeks just searching a 10 by 10 acre area with a team of 10.
Well, that was what I was saying with my with one of my best friends, Gavin, him and I hosted their podcast. Shout out Stuttering in Silence. When we drove to Colorado, I didn't run into anyone. There was nothing. I remember, Cody. Actually, funny enough, got pulled over for lingering in the left lane.
Oops.
but like I remember driving, and it's like when you kind of just you hit the thing, you get on the turn, and like you just drive. Like I didn't run into any tolls, I didn't run into anything, and I'm like, you really can just drive and just keep going.
Especially in Colorado. I've been there before. It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and just the way you're on those highways are you can just see for absolutely 50, 100 miles.
Well, I'm just saying, like, because we drove from PA to Colorado.
You did a big
that's
drive.
That's what I'm saying. This is a couple months ago. So I'm like, dude, we left PA and got there. I was in like 25 hours, but it's like we didn't see anyone. Like I really saw any cops. You're really not seeing any tolls, and I'm like, you really can just kind of coast and just go across the country.
Yeah, it was kind of made that way. Big ups to the Eisenhower administration for the National Highway System.
Oh well, I didn't know that actually.
Just another little factoid.
Well, see, but that was what I was saying. Is I'm like, dude, if it's that easy for just some randos, to just dip, like if he's careful, like he could end up in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was a big scare for a lot of you guys too.
Well, it was more. It was just the biding of the time, because he kept getting found. Like they didn't lose absolute track of him. If there was maybe more than 3 days without news, it was pretty rare.
Okay.
So it had that gone on for 4 or 5 days. That's when you got into the possibility of again, we're not going to know, but if in a real search, if they're not finding anything over a couple of days, that's a real worry point, because you need to keep constantly finding and searching and getting ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
But that's a lot, and something like that. But as constables, we have to find people all the time in terms of searching for just basic level warrants. So that's our, getting to part about the job. We can do, when we get warrants for people who have, some felony stuff, but mostly minor stuff. But sometimes you have to be ahead about yourself, because, some people who have a lot of fraud instances, let's say there are contractors who don't exactly work with all permits. And then they get caught working without permits, and they get fined.
Okay.
They tend to try to avoid those.
Sure.
And, you got to do a little digging. And one time I heard somebody told me, he's like, yeah, just call them. I'm like, what do you mean just call them? Oh, yeah, just call them, tell them you want to get a quote, and just serve them.
Wait, so you can serve over the phone?
No, not on the phone when I show up for the quote.
Oh, that's so this is my question. I don't know if you ever watched Suits, right?
No, I haven't. I've heard about it, but I've never watched
So there's this one scene, and it reminds me of you every single time. It's they're all like the lawyers are they're sitting around, they have this big massive problem happening, and this guy walks in and he goes, "Did anyone order takeout? I have a takeout for Jessica." And Jessica and Harvey are like, no, not to like say their name, like just in case.
Yeah.
And then Mike goes, yeah, well, that's Jessica right there, and then puts the food down and goes, "You've been served. Enjoy your food." Yeah, have you ever had to do that?
Not yet. So so here's what. Knowing nothing about the show, I'll only pick a pause that
Yeah.
lawyers are used to getting served.
Yeah.
It's very easy to find them. They're officers of the court.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually not an issue. It's people who don't want to get served, especially with child support stuff. So yeah, and also especially like when it deals with children and termination parental rights. There's all kinds of different legal mechanics that somebody might not want to happen right away. And so that's where you get into service. In fact, actually, one that you can find on tape, if you look on YouTube, is Olivia Wilde,
Olivia Wilde.
the actress.
I can't think.
She was Olivia Wilde.
Where does she play? I'm sorry.
She
can't...
played a half dozen in different roles.
Okay, I feel so bad because the name sounds familiar.
Yeah, once you Google her,
I'm
gonna
feel stupid, aren't I?
Pretty much.
Let me just look it up.
Go right ahead. So Olivia Wilde was in the midst of a divorce with Jason Sudeikis, Ted Lasso fame. And this is all. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Oh, there. Boom. Don't worry, it's okay. Trust me.
Sometimes yeah, that's fine.
No,
go ahead.
So she's at like a film festival doing a Q&A. Exactly. And she's there just, being herself and all that jazz. And then like she gets up to leave and is like, hi, and she's going down for the dais and she thinks this guy's coming to help her down. He serves her with the divorce papers right there and then.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we know it's you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Olivia Wilde.
Do people like not give up their name if you're like looking for them?
Yeah. See, that's the thing. When people are aware they're trying to avoid service, yeah, that's when they heavily screen their calls. They don't answer the door. They turtle up real quick because they're afraid. And
what if you see someone that you know their name?
Now, that's the thing. If I know the person personally and I can some way or like I can prove either on I know that person. That's me. So part of the thing is when you do a service that you sign an affidavit. Constable David B. Secker was at this location at this time, served, Matt, I can never say your last name. Lepore,
You're good. I got you on the first time, so it's cool.
So there you go. So Matt Lepore at, his house, and, he was approximately, 6 foot tall, so-and-so pounds, and write this whole affidavit out. So that way, if you ever challenge me in court, like, I was never served properly, like, well, is this not at your house? Do you not work here? Da 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 da. All those things. A lot of people get served at work. Damn. Oh, servers.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, I'm not gonna mention your name.
It doesn't happen all the time, but like, if you know like a server that's or a bartender, you just go up and say, "Hey, are you Bethany? Bethany so and so? You've been served." Oh, that's that that you gotta be like. You have to really be playing the avoidance game to get that happened.
Wow. So like, okay, so like, have you ever served like someone where it is like child involved, where it's like they are getting their parental rights terminated?
I couldn't speak on that just because of the nature of like
I understand.
Those are when you get children involved. It's like
sure, I understand. I understand.
I've been involved in a serve at the prison before. And over at SEI Phoenix. That's an incredibly put together facility. Go through all that layers of security. He to serve someone there was definitely, it really eye opens you to because it's a brand new facility. So the layers of security they have there really do it's an awe scenario.
Wow.
And you realize how Loctite, especially a facility like that, is.
So when you're serving someone in jail papers, right? Mm-hmm. what are you serving them for? Like, you know what I'm
It
saying?
could be half a dozen and different things. They could be sued by someone else for whatever, civilly for whatever they did.
Sure.
Custody things happen, and termination of parental rights happen. Uh, I worked at the Register Wills and Orphans Court for 5 years, so I was actually I've now been on both sides of this, like where I've served a person in there for stuff, and then now I've served or I've worked at the Orphans Court where it all happened, so I've seen the course of where all this goes, and
Dude,
it is a lot. But the thing is, this is for something like this to happen, a lot of things have to be wrong. A enormous amount of things have to be wrong, and the only remedy for this is to permanently disenfranchise someone from their children. You have to realize that this is not done lightly at all. There, not a lot of these cases happen even in county court.
wow.
So this is something that is honestly rare, but it does happen.
That's terrifying. Because you always hear about it, and then it makes you take a step back, and you're like, what is happening? Like like,
Lots of things, and that's the thing. There's no one case that kind of you can. There's no you'd have to aggregate a lot of data to be able to get a better sense of why does this happen. Those are for criminal justice. Doctorate people sit there and really look at criminological data.
Sure.
And really get to an analytical answer.
Yeah.
Because honestly, one thing I've been noticing is like the same deal. I'm only seeing my fraction of evictions and warrants. It would take honestly all of us constables to really get together and parcel that data out to get a better picture of how does these things happen.
Yeah.
Because we're relegated by our area. So I only do the evictions in Norristown because those are the courts that I work for. And not all constables work for all the different courts in different areas. So our sample size is parochial.
Okay, then that makes sense. It's just, I feel like, people always see these videos, and I feel like it happens all the time. But like, how often are you serving people?
Every day.
How many would you say per day?
It can vary. So like some days I'll get like 10, 20 landlord tenant things. So that's the initial start of the landlord tenant process. So, for example, let's just say besides rent, because that's a usual kind of scenario, let's just say you've broken the lease by, let's say, I don't know, you were trying to get out of a gas bill by rerouting the gas from a neighbor's house to your house, so that way you didn't have to pay your gas bill anymore.
That happens?
That actually happened. I actually served a landlord-tenant situation with that exactly on the situation. Yeah, that like to me, I mean, I've gone along. I've been in college before.
Gosh.
Actually, was back in Westchester the other day. Lovely town. I love it. And you were a broke college kid.
Yeah.
We're all in that space, and I've stretched a dollar, but I've never in my day ever thought, you know what, if I just switch over the gas to my neighbor, you know what, that's like $20 a month I'm saving. It's like no, I've never.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, the effort to take to, and also the danger.
Yeah.
To because they're not. I don't imagine the guy was being safe.
No.
Oh
my gosh, dude, that's crazy. So
Yeah.
what is thus far like the craziest story you've had being a constable that you can talk about?
Craziest story. Craziest story that I want to talk about. That's hard. You have to let me ruminate on that for a minute.
No, you're good.
One thing I want to be respectful for is people's privacy.
Sure.
So you have to, I see put it this way. I see people in their most vulnerable moments.
Sure.
When these things are happening. So you have to give it would be very odd if I, told you an eviction story because we don't know the person, we don't know what situation got them there. But, I'll put it this way. I'll tell you the grossest thing. that's about as good as I get because one time I did an eviction, the person was not there. This was in Norristown. When I served the first time, I could just smell bad smells coming through the door when I did the initial serve. Now, I remind you, these situations, especially this was actually when I first started back in last October. So we were actually, long story short, COVID restrictions were starting to come loose at that point, and landlords were starting to get more people out. So these are like kind of the last people using the last fingernails of the justice system to
Yeah.
keep themselves in these places.
Yeah.
And this was definitely probably, I I don't know how this person lived, but I couldn't imagine them living with other people. When I tell you, when I opened that door, it was like I was punched in the face with stunk.
Ugh.
Like a being made of stanky, rancid death just came and just whopped me in front of the face. I put a mask on. Like I'm usually pretty good with something like that, but I went and put a mask on after that, and I put booties on my feet because the ground was literally littered with cat crap, uh, bugs. Yeah,
Oh my God, that's
dead
disgusting.
mouse, things like that. Yeah, it was
How
just
do you live like that?
that's one of those things where you're just like, oh my god. And there was this is like a studio apartment. It was just sort of like, you know, this is not a large apartment,
Sure.
and like there was a small little kitchenette that literally was just it was just caked with grease. Just caked with old
Ew,
grease,
dude.
and
Oh.
there was a pot full of this. It looked like something consisting of potato soup, but I don't think it was at all.
Oh my
And there
God.
was, I mean, this like I still have the I still have camera footage of this, and it would. I want to send it to training videos to be like, this is like, see this video. Imagine what this smells like. It was worse.
Dude, that's
Be prepared for
disgusting.
this.
How do you let something get so bad like that?
It could be honestly mental health. And
Sure.
that's the thing. That's where, I want to say, not to, most likely this was a mental health situation. So, there was a lot of needs not being met for this situation to happen, both the person and the landlord.
Yeah.
So, both really lose in this respect because now this person with an eviction on their record is less likely to probably be able to get other housing and just going to be another, stone around their neck and not being, it's hard to get treatment when you're on a stable life. If you're just a working person, trying to deal with your own mental health issues, not to that, probably
Mm-hmm.
not to that, maybe not to that extent.
Sure.
I don't want to, say one way or
Yeah,
the other.
yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's hard enough to get mental health services when you're working. Imagine how hard it is when you're homeless, you've got a record, stuff's piling up, and you don't have money. So,
Fuck, dude.
and that's where, yes, initially, the initial hit of what is this? How did this happen? And then gives way to the reality when you think about it of like, you're right. This person is not living with other people. Their mental health is probably declining. In fact, I think that particular case, the guy didn't even show up to the court hearing. So that's you give the judge no chance to for your own defense if you don't even show up, which happens.
So, okay, so, all right. You come, you go, you met Lepore? I'm like, yes, you serve me, right? If I don't show up, you're coming for me, right? Like, that's.
So not
Or,
me per se. So that's the particular. So like if it's a civil hearing, then you just default. If you got served and you get a court date and you don't show up, you were served, you didn't show up, you default. That's a civil.
so defaulting. So that basically you lose the case or you're held
Kind
in
of.
contempt. Okay.
Oh, that's held in contempt. That's a whole different thing. If you were being taken to court over, like, if the DA was charging you with something, criminally speaking, that's when the sheriffs come get you, or local PD, or both, depending how bad of a boy you've been.
I understand.
So we deal with the lower court stuff. So there are people that do have felony stuff that do they usually get picked up by local PD PD because over here we have the luxury of having municipal police department. Out in the western half of the state, the state police will do it, but if there's something that needs to be done quickly, they call the constables
Yeah.
because that's what they have out there.
Yeah.
So it really is situation by situation.
That's insane. Because, I don't know if you have seen, do you have TikTok? No? Or do you?
No,
Okay.
I do not want the Chinese
Okay.
looking at my phone.
Smart. You are smart. I'll show you either like when we're done this, or I'll bring a couple videos on Sunday. There's this guy, Pinell County Sheriff. He's a deputy sheriff, and what cracks me up is he goes, like, you always see it is like he'll write tickets and stuff like that for like criminal speeding or whatever it is. Like, he works in the traffic, the traffic department, right?
Okay.
But he'd always be like, "Are you gonna show up to court? 'Cause if you don't, we're gonna come for you." I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like,
Well, is he charging with just speeding tickets?
well, so like, so the way he would say it is like criminal speeding opposed to just like regular speeding or whatever it is.
Okay, so
So that's what. So like that's
that would
what
be something that they have on. And what state is this?
this is Arizona, Pinell County.
Arizona. Okay, so that would mean, like there would be. I mean, there's criminal, of course, traffic violations, but like, that'd be quite a threshold, And I imagine in Arizona there'd be traffic laws are a little different.
Well, yeah, it was just I didn't know if that's how it is here, because I know because like they have like a whole YouTube video and they're really cool. Like the sheriff will pull people over and like do like nice things like, "Hey, thank you for following the road laws."
Yeah, that
And then
happens.
but his deputy does the opposite.
Good cop, bad cop.
Good
thing.
cop, bad cop. He's cool, but like he's like I've watched
More
one of his-
stern.
very more stern. So I didn't know if it was like that here. Okay, so when it comes to surveying and things like that, like how does that work here? When it comes to like you're dealing with situations like that.
With deal with situations, I try to use my head and talking. That is how I solve 99% of my problems.
Yeah.
Because let's say if I'm serving a final eviction notices, there might be some feelings, some emotions, and negative feelings towards myself.
Mm-hmm.
Even though this is a judgment of the court, I had nothing to do with this. I did not.
You're just the middleman.
I'm just the middleman. I'm here to serve and to make sure that you get your stuff out and the landlord has his property returned to him, i.e. the apartment, house, whatever's being rented.
Sure.
Oh, that's my place in this. And there will be people, a lot of people, that want to start litigating and in court, going court over this, literally in the street, and arguing with this about this, that, and the other deal. And you have to sit there, of course, and just listen. That's, there's no point in me trying to shout a person down, overbear on the situation. That's not going to get me anywhere.
Yeah.
If the person starts ratcheting up to levels where I feel like something is in danger, that's that person crossing a threshold.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as they're just talking about it, they're upset, I will sit there and listen and be like, okay, all that you can tell to your attorney. Or if you call the court, you want to appeal, which they have the right to, they can go to Commonwealth Court in the Pathonetary's office and file an appeal from an eviction. That puts a stay on things, and then when that's settled, it goes one way or the other.
So when you go to serve them for like an eviction notice, right? You say and you listen to them, which I mean is very admirable. But you can't just like serve and dip out.
I can.
Oh, okay,
I choose not to.
That's fair.
Because this is something that's happening to them, and of course, all situations are different. Some people just want you to just serve them and be out. They don't want to hear nothing, and that's fine. Some people want to talk to you about it, and that's fine. I'm a public servant. That's when I get down to it, as much as I am part of law enforcement, I am also a public servant and an elected one as well. So I'm not afraid of I should say it's I'm more concerned about the person getting all the information they can that they want at the moment I'm there, and that just makes the whole process better. Because if something really bad has happened in their life to get them to this state, me spending a couple of minutes just listening and trying to I can't make the situation better, but I can at least listen and do what I can. Like, okay, so it's at 12 o'clock. Oh, and you work and you're trying to figure everything out.
Yeah.
And like, I show there in 12 and they're not quite ready yet. I can go to the landlord, be like, hey, can we give them an extra hour or two to give them the last little bits? And they're 99% of the time, they're more than happy to do that, because that way they don't have to deal with their stuff later, or set another date for them to come back and unlock the doors. Just get it done now.
So what happens if that 1% they're like, no?
Well, it's the landlord's property. They have the judgment, so it is their word. And I can try to negotiate with them. I can try to be, and that's the thing. I actually try to maintain a very good relationship with the different landlords in town. And I maybe only once has that been a situation where it's like, we want this guy out now. And
So what happens then? Like what happens with their stuff? Like what? Like
so you have 10 days to request to request a date within 30 days to then come and get your stuff again. Basically.
okay.
So,
man.
and depending on the how much stuff, how able is the person to do this on their own, because a lot of time people in that situation, they don't have family and friends to come help them out. It's just them. They're older. It can take all kinds of shape and sizes.
So like what happens if someone's like a 50, 60, 70-year-old person and they're not able, like what?
Well, that would be something that hopefully that would get figured out in court, because that's something the judge would be like, okay, the person would, talk about their situation. Like, I don't have family and friends. It's just me. I'm alone. And that's where the judge, of course, would then, start asking them questions about what options do you have, where you're going to go after this. That's something that they do when they're in court. But as I was told you earlier, sometimes people don't even show up to court, which leaves the judge the least favorable option, because if they're they can at least help you out there and then about getting services. That's something in Norristown that we're really good about, because we do have a lot of people in need. So judges will be talking to the person, and then they'll call, they themselves will call the people at services like, hey, we have a person, doesn't have family, doesn't have anyone to care for them, they're getting evicted, what can we do? And the least,
That's awesome.
yeah, and they'll make phone calls, and when a judge calls, people listen. So
Crickets down here.
yeah,
But that is cool. I've never actually understood fully like what that all kind of entails, because like in my head, I guess I don't know that much about all of the what's it called, like the services and things like that. So
yeah,
so because in my head I'm like, okay, this person is getting evicted. They have nowhere to go, and I'm assuming they don't have any money. And if they're getting evicted and they're behind on like payments, then they might not have anyone to help them out and subsidize that.
yes.
So what kind of services do they provide? Do they give them a place to stay? Do they help them move things?
So this is the nonprofit land.
Okay.
So I'll give you a quick thing of how this works. There's a group called Epic, and at least works with the Norristown courts. That's very good. I talk to everyone who I meet when I serve them with eviction and notices. The court notices.
Yeah.
So the first part, I tell them this piece of paper in the back is to Epic. This is a nonprofit that helps people with rental. So the Epic people, they're really good at finding grant money for people in these situations. I don't know a lot. I can't really speak personally to how they work. So actually, that's something I need to do.
Sure.
Is actually have a sit down with these people and be like, hey, how does this happen? What are realistic expectations? But I know from what I've seen when I talk about not a lot more higher percentage of the time when I talk to them about Epic at that stage when they first get the court notice.
Yeah.
I don't see them again for an eviction.
Okay.
And I'm honestly happier about that than most things.
Okay.
So like if I talk to someone and they're like, no one's ever said to me, I need help with rental assistance. That's not where people's heads are at that moment.
Sure.
They don't think I'm going to even care about that when they see me, because they just see, the whole
get up. You look like a police officer.
Well, yeah, I look like law enforcement, so
Yeah.
they don't feel like this person's coming with directions of help.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
they don't know to ask. So that's why I make the effort to be like, okay, this piece of paper back here, because it's on the very back, and most people just see the court date stuff, and there's some other things on the thing in the back that they won't know really to look at it. So I make it a point to like turn the pages, put it in front of them, and point that out.
Dude, that's awesome.
And that's the kind of service that I would want done.
I feel like that could be the difference between someone reaching out for help or kind of like rebuilding than just being like, fuck,
Yeah.
dude, I have a court date. This police, they probably don't know you're a constable, but like this officer came to my door.
Yeah. That's the thing. To the people, most people are just, oh, it's police, because they see the whole thing. They don't know the difference between a constable and a police and a sheriff. That's not what their thinking is at that moment.
It wasn't until like 3 years ago that I knew the difference. Because when I would see that, right, I would see like a YouTube video or like I'd hear about it. I'm like, oh, I guess like officers do that. And then I forget how it got corrected, but I was like, oh, it is not the same thing. Like they're different like entities.
Yep. Yeah, it's in other states it's also different. So there are constables in Texas. They are elected, but you actually have to have gone through the police academy in order to do that, because that's Texas state law.
Okay, that makes sense.
So in Kentucky it's different. In Baltimore it's different.
Okay, so when it comes to like assistance, right? So show me kind of what that looks like. You go, you serve someone. They have their 10 days and they're following court dates.
It's like 12, 14 days, sometimes like that. Depending. Sometimes it's 10, but to try to get it as fast as we can, so that way they can make the phone call and get the ball rolling. Because not everything happens. You have to apply. It's an application process. You have to show your income. You have to show why. Hey, you also have to have been a good leaseholder. You can't be like, they're trying to kick me out because I got caught selling drugs in the apartment. They're not going to help you.
So then with like all like so say you apply, everything works out. Like what does the process look like then?
So that's the thing. I honestly don't know a lot about that process. That's something I got to look into. But more often than not, people do get grant assistance because as long as it is the rent. I shouldn't even say I don't know what the limits are, but I've seen people with some, some very high back due payments get help. So the purpose of the help is that it's there. They actually still have COVID funding, I think, from the past pandemic, so they still have access to a lot of funding right now, and that's honestly I'm really happy they have that, because Norristown has, to me, like one of the precipitous problems I've seen, at least in my area, if I can like prognosticate something.
Yeah.
Norristown needs an employer. Norristown needs a basic employer where somebody can just go and get a job. It does not have to be the highest paying job in the world,
But just a job.
but just a job, something that will give them some money starting out. Because there are some halfway homes. There are some places where people are trying to start out again, but there's not a lot of employers in Norristown. There's not a lot of places where somebody trying to rebuild their life can start building the funds to do that.
Really? So like, interesting. So how does that work when you're in like you're in this assisted living? What kind of jobs are they like looking for? Like, does it matter?
That's situational. So you got to remember, people in assisted living, if halfway homes, they might be coming out of the prison system. Depending on their situation, because they can't, they don't necessarily want to kick people out into poverty. So if you don't have anyone to pick you up when you're out of prison, you can apply for assistance. While you're in there, caseworker, depending on your situation, can vouch for you, help you out. But it's various degrees of make it work is the best way I can describe it. Everyone is, nonprofit land is tenuous. Everyone's working off of grant money. No one is, trying to. It's really hard to fundraise for men's shelters. It's hard to fundraise for shelters. Period. So there's there's a lot of barriers from these services getting better access to more funding, and it's because also they deal with a population that not everybody wants to not necessarily help, but it's not looking out for. There's
Yeah.
some people with violent backgrounds. Some people don't. A lot of times with men's shelters, you can't have a violent background and get the help at all.
Mm-hmm.
So if you did, let's just say, get not to say that there's various degrees of violence.
Yeah.
Getting in a fight with somebody is not the same as beating up a loved one or a family member or girlfriend or something like that. So, but the laws and a lot of the groups don't have the ability, the staff to make the differentials. They just make a blanket
Oh.
rule, and that's a barrier.
Oh, dude.
So that's the thing. There's the quite simple answer is there's not a lot. That's something that if there was a big hoopty-la on the internets recently in the news about the homeless situation, the unhoused situation
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Norristown. And I'll just put it simply that there's a lot of people that are very unhappy about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. You're entitled to those feelings. Homeowners complain about a lot of not very pleasant things happening to their property, and putting necessarily the blame on the homeless population, good, bad, and wrong, right, and indifferent. The thing is, I'll be the bad guy and I'll say this: none of that's going to change it. Being angry about a situation is not going to change it. I have never been angry at a situation in my life and it's solved.
Yeah.
This is going to take a well thought out, funded plan that everybody in the county is going to have a hand in. Because that's honestly this is one thing I do point out that does make a lot of sense. Norristown is sort of the dumping ground for a lot of other townships and municipalities. I've even heard other counties putting their unhoused population into Norristown
Really?
and running away. Again, this is just I've not seen this.
Hearsay,
I've
yeah.
never heard this, seen this personally done myself. This is all secondhand. Take it for what it is. But that's what I've been told.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily have anything that necessarily dissuades me of that opinion either. So as much as it is secondhand, I haven't. No one's come up to me and said, "Hey, David, let me set that record straight for you." No one's done that quite yet.
Yeah, I mean it's got to be hard because even like Sean,
Yeah.
and like he's had some just insane running stories and
Oh, yeah.
situations, and like of course he would tell us and I'm like, dude, like
Yeah.
sometimes like you really think you're like. Because like I have to check myself sometimes too. It's like my girlfriend, one of my best friends, lives in Norristown. The gym's like right around the street. Like it's not in Norristown, but it's Norris. Yeah, it's like Trooper.
Okay, I'll go. Norristown, real like, yeah. All right, so I've lived in Norristown for about 12 years now,
Jeez.
and people really do believe if you live in Norristown and you've lived there for a long time, there's a lot of people who really get an island mentality about Norristown that like, I will never leave it. I will never escape this thing. And I'm like, King of Prussia is right over there. Philly's, a 40-minute, 50-minute bus ride that way. There's $1 million homes in Bluebell 8 miles north.
Not even that much.
Not even.
Like, yeah.
I really, I don't get that, but also I'm not the person, who's lived in Norristown their whole life and are facing a different situation. So I have to be cognitive that I don't see things the same way as other people.
Agreed.
And
yeah.
so it takes, it would be simple enough to be like, well, you know what? I don't see it that way, and then sit there and just nod off to all these groups' issues.
Sure.
But in that same respect, the mentality of that you can never get out of your situation is a self-fulfilling prophecy. That, you people do get out of bad situations. And it doesn't matter where, who, what, or why. It just takes the same amount of effort. Just like if you aren't getting the same way out of your lifts, you've heard me say this a million times.
Oh, trust
To
me.
get what you're not getting, you got to do what you're not doing.
Yeah.
Simple as, and that's an
Dude,
oversimplification of
you
all life.
Zach, Sonny, Sam, all with the one-liners, dude.
I know.
It's great.
I know it's a generational thing, and also it's an experience thing because as you're gaining experience and being a young lifter or in work life, all things in general, you begin with a large strata of information and then you start narrowing down to the lowest common denominator of the truth of like just it really is lifting is just as simple as train, eat, sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's not it's not written on the back of jackets, to sell jackets, although it is. It does that. There's a nugget of truth in there.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's with everything too. Plus, there's also this like this little like one-liner. It's like speaking things into existence. And it works both in positive and in negative aspects where it's like, you come from hard times. If you keep speaking into existence, hey, I'm going to be like this forever, I'm going to be like this forever, then you're probably going to be like that forever. But if you speak into existence, even if like, it's still hard, you have to grind and grind and grind, but like, I'm going to do something great one day. I'm going to get out of this. And you keep saying that, that's your mentality. Same thing. Like you say lifting, I'm going to bench 500 pounds. I'm going to bench 500 pounds. You might not necessarily get there. I mean, it's lifting. It's a different situation.
That's the thing. The expectation. So the goal. You have the mindset there of I can do something. It just that's what a mindset is of just visualizing victory. Of like this is my goal. Now, how you get there is where the tweaking and more attention to detail is involved.
Things, yeah.
I want to get a It's like imagine you're Lewis and Clark. You want to get it to the other side of the American continent. They had the drive, but they also had to, hook into local knowledge and the people of the area to get there safely, or they would have just died.
Yeah.
All the willpower in the world will not get you across the continental United States if you don't know how to get there.
Exactly. That makes sense. Which it also is nice to see that you guys have like some kind of programs to guide people.
Well, that's the thing. These are not U.S. like government programs. These are nonprofits.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
Oh, I see your point. Okay.
See, that's a mentality a lot of people think that we'll get into politics here. The government has things that give money to people for, it depends on who you ask and where and how these go. Oh, I'm sure if you go into certain areas, is there people like, oh, people, that's
them people.
Them people. We don't even have to say one thing or another. We just them people over there are getting free handouts, free phones. They don't have and you can. It does give me a headache after a while. I can only listen to so much, but then I go to the job and see people who are getting handouts, and I'm like, you wouldn't trade places with them if your life depended on it.
Yeah. So, and see, that's the thing. There's and I think what's nice is if people like actually open their eyes and like talk to people like you who experience this every day.
Yeah.
It's like, who am I to be like here and judging? I'm sure there's plenty of cases that the certain political party will use, like, look at this. This is an example of they're wasting the government. But then it's also like you look on the opposite side. It's like, look at this family and this mother and a husband who are trying to work all they can and they can't provide. And now here's Constable Dave Biesecker showing up at the door, and it's like,
I'm bringing the unhappy news.
Yeah. So I mean, there's both sides of the thing, and it really is interesting though to like kind of hear these stories and see the things that Sean would say. And I'm like, dude, that's wild.
Yeah.
Sometimes it sounds like the Wild West. Sometimes,
it can be that way.
Because he showed me the video of like him getting shot at.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, he's like, all right, you can't judge me. I was crying I was screaming like a little baby, and I watched it. And I'm like, yo, you could hear it whizzing. I'm like,
yep.
I'm like, yo. He goes, dude, I know. I was freaking the fuck out. I was like, dude.
Yeah. Get hot moments, get your blood up. Everything comes tight. You get the narrow vision thing. moments can happen and feel like forever, and then an hour can go by in a blink.
Yeah.
It's adrenaline is a hell of a drug.
So what was you said at one point you guys had to do your constable thing over like a Walmart or something like that?
So
Or
I was during the past week. There were heightened security at a lot of places in
right,
Philadelphia.
yeah.
They hired constables to help as a supplementary to these efforts to help secure these locations.
Mm.
I and a bunch of other constables that were doing this work, and we, it, it was okay. Everything, we maintained in our spaces. Everything was fine. People, you know, there was some testing of limits. People were trying to look for places. Uh, I don't. We don't want to. I don't. We can't infer who or what or why. But we maintained security presence, and everywhere we were, nothing happened. Although generally nothing happened after the first couple days. But that's no one wants to take a risk.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very heightened situation there for a little while. Nobody kind of knew what was going on, but thankfully everything came out fine. In terms afterwards, it's a hard situation, and when you have the situation that broke down as it was,
Mm-hmm.
there's it's still ongoing, so I don't want to talk too much about it.
Yeah.
But it's we did the job so that way all the officers in Philadelphia can denote their resources to other areas. So that's the value add that I see that we provide is that in certain situations we can help provide armed presence security and peacekeeping efforts to an area so that way officers can spend their resources in other more needed areas.
Sure. That's actually really cool. I never would have thought of it like that. Because when you said you were heading down there, like it's crazy down there. I was like, oh my gosh, they're really just pulling all the stops.
Well, we're there so that way they can be in the areas that the Philly PD really need to be quickly, because if they have to
Oh
spread
yeah,
out,
why? Yeah.
if they only have so many officers, they have a whole city, a lot of places that need protection, and only so many slots. People gotta sleep. A bunch of our guys, we're jumping around from places to places. Is doing, we were making it work, and it was a collective. It wasn't a collect like we're all working together, but we're all trying to get the same job done.
That's cool. Yeah, I guess I never thought of it like that. People gotta sleep. People gotta eat.
Yep.
There's an entire city.
Yeah, and
Instead of just
Philly
Broad
cops can only
Street.
work so many 24-hour shifts.
24-hour shifts.
Well, they're not meant to be 24-hour shifts. They just happen that way.
Yeah.
And that's the God's honest truth of just how some things happen. Ask Sean, he'll tell you all about it. I talked to another guy who was an EMS. He's a constable, and he's like, yeah, you get like 18-hour shifts, and then you get the dreaded 12 or 18-hour shifts sometimes, and then there's sometimes you get the dreaded 36. He called it. You work like an 18-hour shift. The guy who was supposed to take over for you doesn't show up, and you just go ahead and work the rest of that shift, and it becomes a dreaded 36. And you're just like, wow.
I think I would pass out or die.
They manage. They try to get rest when they can. They try to eat when they can. And sometimes that happens. That's the reality of like first responder life.
I guess that makes sense because whenever you see like riots or things like this, you always see all these cops, and then I guess no one ever thinks about there's still the aftermath, the other parts of the city that are still riddled with things going on, fires, crimes, domestic violence, problem with children, car accidents, like all these things that are still.
A news article I saw, actually, there was a T-Mobile. I forget exactly where it was, but T-Mobile during that last week was robbed 3 times in the same week, in 3 days. Each day it got robbed by a different person. Not the same guy, different people. And this guy owns several other shops, and he's just capping it off, and I'm done. Who could blame him? His insurance is probably unreachable now. And that's the other thing people don't really think about when these riot situations happen. Yes, you go after places,
Oh
and
my god.
and destruction, mayhem, and things are caused. The insurance rates go up, which and like Walmart and other big places will pay for it, but that means small business guys, their rates go up as well. So if you're trying to start a small business after a big or several big incidents, and you go and try to get insurance, it's going to be a lot higher than it was before all that.
Yeah, what was the when that was all happening in Philly? What was the was it, I know Wawa pulled out of Philly, right?
Wawa's pulled out of some center city spots
Yeah.
because of just theft.
Yeah.
Just blanket theft. Target is closing stores
Yep.
because
Yeah.
they just can't protect themselves from theft.
I was gonna say I couldn't remember if it was Target or if it was
It's both.
yeah, I know Wawa, that was a big one that I saw.
And also and also the other thing, more importantly, the safety of their employees.
Yeah. Well, that was a big tweet. I'll have to find it and pull it up. But people were like, yeah, like, if the employers are watching this happen, like, things are so violent already, here's this employee, hey, stop that. And they try to, like, like, and they get stabbed, shot. Like, prime example. That's not about theft, but just recently, this YouTuber
Oh yeah, I saw that, and the jury did
acquitted him.
Acquit him, and yeah, that's
It's like, you
power
don't
of
know,
jury.
you don't know what people got, and like, yeah, that was a different situation. I'm just using that as an
Oh
example
no,
of just.
it doesn't. No, it's to me, it's kind of the same. It's not the same vibe, but it's the same thing.
Okay, yeah, we're on the same page. Then.
It's the idea is that there are people people act wild
Mm-hmm.
to people who work in retail. No one will say different on that.
Yeah.
And like when I see it, it still bugs me to know like it's the equivalent of fingernails on chalkboards.
Oh,
To shout out at a person making minimal wage at a big box store about something that they have no power to change.
yeah.
But because of existential circumstances that may or may not have happened to this person, they are now feeling it's their right and God-given ability to shout at this person at the top of their lungs and to say all kinds of God's awful things because that person did not get their way.
Yeah. Dude, I see it in the restaurant industry all the time.
Oh,
all the time. I can't tell you.
That's why I couldn't work in the restaurant
Well,
industry.
dude, I'm not
couldn't
allowed
do
to
it.
talk to customers that much anymore. They go, hey, we want to talk to the chef. I have to sign to cook. I know I have to. I have such a low tolerance, and I'll never be. I shouldn't say that. I've never said outlandishly vulgar things, but I've made distinct comments to where the women and or men are going to be self-conscious for the next 3 to 5 weeks.
As you should. And again, I was raised in a world where unless there is something applicably wrong with the meal, it is nothing but please and thank you.
Yes, my dad would slap me silly if I ever like got my plate and didn't say, like, you know what I'm saying, like if I was like, oh, I didn't want onions, take it off.
Yeah.
Oh,
deal.
I didn't want cheese. You have a knife, scrape it off.
Yeah. Work.
Like it's like you're because he's like, listen, let me tell you what's gonna happen, right? And I've not seen it. It's like say you sit down with your wife and you guys are having dinner
Girlfriend.
and girlfriend. Oh, sorry,
It's
sorry.
okay. Yeah, I get the upgrade. I've been given the promotion a bunch of times. But
People think that about Christina and I now, and I'm like, it's only been like 9 months. But like they'll be like, oh, I didn't want like LTO, and it'll come back, and I'm like, you're fucking kidding me, right? We can't just,
So we got to make a whole.
So we have to make. I have to, or like no, like I'll like. So what's also funny too is you'll notice that people. Well, I'll make this very brief. Is like things will come back and they're like, oh, I didn't like this, and I'm like, okay. Flip the plate. The joke is you flip the plate around, and then you send it back out. And they go, they loved it. I'm like, dude, all I did, like in the window, I just flipped the plate around as a joke, and I go, here you go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, people just like to bitch.
That. I'm sure you've seen the movie Waiting.
Oh.
The classic. Oh, you say dad? Oh,
yeah,
yes. Oh,
yeah. Because that's what they did. They're like
the cook jury.
The what is it? Well, we have our first pitch of the day. Get a little continental.
Oh, yes. I think that if anything, that movie gave me all the rationale of like, yeah, you don't, unless something like, unless it is absolutely blue in the middle steak, there's no reason it should be sent back.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is like that doesn't really happen with like the weightings of like I've never done that, but
Yes.
but aside from all that, but yeah, we're hitting little times now, but yeah, dude, I know.
I know it goes quick.
Every time because usually like I've said this before, I like check the volume and then I look down, I'm like, oh fuck, but. Yeah, dude, listen, seriously, I really appreciate you coming back on. Like, and I love talking about the whole Cavalcante thing, and thanks for like speaking on what you could speak on. Because I know we talked about before. You're like, hey, I'm like totally fine. This is not a gotcha podcast. But yeah, dude,
Appreciate it.
hopefully when you're down in down in like North and South, everything's safe and good.
Oh yeah,
But
it's always fine and down there. That's why we're there.
But seriously, guys, if you're looking to like at public servants, people you're voting for, and things like this, if you take this man and like go, okay, I want someone like him, that's what you should be voting for. Someone who's willing to, get yelled at and stay and like be like, hey, there's still ways to figure this out, And I don't think a lot of people are like that, especially,
I appreciate that, man.
and it's cool to see because, there's plenty, like, I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey. So take that for what it is, now in college, but like, yeah, it's like, there's so much stuff going on and just,
when you grow up with diversity, with the adversity, you're able to get a lot more perspective about other people's situations.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, your Instagram is still it's a
David.Bsecker. I was about to say .com, but no.
No, it's all good because it'll pop up right at your feet. On the right there. But yeah, guys, check him out. He's awesome, and I'm sure he'll be on again.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.